With us on set is Face the Nation moderator John Dickerson, and in Nashua, New Hampshire, Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett. Major, will be right with you, but first, John, I want to start with you. It's so fascinating. Bill Clinton is going to be at his first solo campaign event on behalf of his wife in New Hampshire. Going forward here, what is the role for Bill Clinton in Hillary Clinton's campaign?
Well, I mean, he is the star of the Democratic Party, not just because he was a popular president, but because he speaks the kind of old-time religion in Democratic politics. He can give a speech better than anybody else, and he knows how to get a crowd going. I mean, his speeches are of a different order than the kinds of speeches that candidates give these days. So he's the kind of person who rallies a crowd. Now, he's undisciplined as well. He was a former president. Nobody tells a former president what to do. So there are always some challenges when he goes out there and campaigns. That's all separate and apart from the kind of circling around each other that the Clinton and Trump campaigns have been doing and the ugliness that potentially suggests might happen. But for the moment, he's a great help for the campaign. And as Major's been talking about, New Hampshire has a special resonance for the Clinton family, both because Bill Clinton came back there and also because Hillary Clinton came back there in 2008. It was where she rallied after Barack Obama beat her in the Iowa caucuses.
I want to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. And Major, we've got a month to go before the Iowa caucuses. We're hearing some of the things that Donald Trump is saying about the Clintons. Do you think he's feeling the heat as we get closer and closer to the Iowa caucuses? Now it's not about poll numbers. It's about getting actual votes.
Sure, that's an enormous variable for the Trump campaign. Can you generate something more than big crowds and excitement? Now look, Donald Trump has big poll numbers and big crowds. Those things are data points and they're real and they matter. There's only one more thing that Donald Trump has to do, and that his campaign has to do, is turn that excitement, those poll numbers, and those large crowds at rallies into real voters at an appointed time. The Trump campaign is very confident about their voter contact methodology, which is different than other campaigns have used in the past. They don't use old voter rolls, for example. They collect all their data from their events and through the computer sign-up that you get onto RSVP for those events. So they have their own database, they say, and they have the team in Iowa, here in New Hampshire and South Carolina, to turn out those voters. We'll find out. But if Donald Trump can do that third part, and he's done the first two, then Donald Trump is going to be very hard to stop in Iowa and New Hampshire. And if he wins or does very well in both those states, he's going to be even harder to stop after that. Let me just throw in a couple of things about Bill Clinton in New Hampshire. You know, I covered the 2007-2008 campaign with Clinton and then Senator Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton was very much involved in the day-to-day tactical execution of that campaign. There were times it felt as much Bill Clinton's campaign as it felt Hillary Clinton's campaign. That's not true anymore. Hillary Clinton is driving her message, driving her strategy, and deploying her husband as she sees fit. Not as it was in 2007 and 2008, where Bill Clinton was like champing at the bit, trying to get into every event as they could to spread the message and the gospel of Hillary Clinton. Now he's being deployed much more tactically, much more selectively, and I think with that will come a kind of inner discipline that Bill Clinton probably didn't always exhibit in 2007 and 2008, because he knows at times, though he was enthusiastic for his wife, he didn't always do her as much good as he wanted to. And I think this time, and especially in New Hampshire, where the Democratic audience will be borderline rapturous in its reception of Bill Clinton, he's going to get off to a very good start. And the campaign certainly expects that he will.
Be fascinating to see how that plays out. Back to Donald Trump. Today, he is out with his first campaign ad in early voting states. It is the first of several he'll roll out this month. Let's take a look.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
The politicians can pretend it's something else, but Donald Trump calls it radical Islamic terrorism. That's why he's calling for a temporary shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until we can figure out what's going on. He'll quickly cut the head off ISIS and take their oil. And he'll stop illegal immigration by building a wall on our southern border that Mexico will pay for.
We will make America great again.
All right, so let me start with you, John. What do you make of that ad?
People are coming to get you, and I will stop them. That's the message of the ad. It's fear. They're either coming over the border, fear. They're coming over the border, ISIS is coming in, stop them. I will put up walls. I mean, it's a distillation of the Trump message to its total core. You remember his campaign started with this idea of building a wall, stopping illegal immigration. There was an economic element to that pitch. There's no longer an economic element, at least in that ad. And now add to the immigration influx, you have this question of Muslims coming into the country. But this is the kind of bouillon cube of the Trump campaign. And as you move towards the voting, the usual strategy is you want voters to keep one thing, one central thing about your campaign in their mind, and that's what this ad is aimed towards.
That's very interesting, because I mentioned that I was surprised that he sort of just reinforced the messages that we've been hearing over and over again. I thought maybe he would use it to perhaps send out another message, to perhaps become attractive to people other than his core. Major, were you surprised at all by the ad, or is that exactly what you expected?
No, it is like Trump himself, subtle as a sledgehammer. Donald Trump has one message, and it is resonating among Republican primary voters and some people who have not participated in Republican primaries and caucuses before. And that message is the country has become weak, it has become irresolute, and it doesn't know who its enemies are or what to do about it. What Donald Trump says is, if you're afraid, if you're anxious, I know who your enemies are, I know what to do about it, and I pledge to you, if you elect me president, I will do the things you have long wanted a president to do on your behalf. Donald Trump's message is, throughout all of his rhetoric, essentially that. And his campaign messaging reflects that. And this is Donald Trump's gambit. He has one approach to this race, and he reinforces that approach over and over and over. And there is a stark contrast between what Donald Trump brings to a political conversation and what a lot of other campaigns bring to conversations. You look at Ted Cruz, for example. He does a lot of micro-targeting, where he will try to find out exactly what kind of messaging works for a certain kind of Republican in a certain geographic area or a certain age group or with a certain issue focus. Donald Trump does not do that. He skips over all of that micro-targeting. He has one huge target, one huge message, and a very large megaphone with which to spread it.
Well, John, I know that you spoke to Donald Trump for Face the Nation. Anything that stood out to you during that conversation?
I think one thing that in the feedback from voters and from people who particularly who are skeptical of Donald Trump, I asked him about spying on U.S. allies. And they expected him, particularly on the question of Israel, which is you would expect it to be pretty simple for a Republican candidate, and particularly Donald Trump, who is also trying to make good with certain donors in the party who care a lot about Israel, who would give a lot of money to his opponents, Sheldon Adelson being the primary one, that the obvious answer would be no spying on Israel ever, no how, they're our ally, we must protect them. And he said, well, no, actually, we might have to spy on them and all of our other allies because everyone else is doing it too. The feedback I got from people who are highly skeptical of Donald Trump, skeptical, and then in that category that goes even beyond skepticism, was, that sounded like an actually pretty reasonable answer. And that's a small little answer. He was basically playing Donald Trump on all kinds of other answers. But that was one thing that in our conversation where people saw something that they hadn't seen before.
Yeah, very interesting. Good stuff.
All right, John Dickerson and Major Garrett, thank you both for your insight.